If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that I do not like the word feminist. I do not like the left-wing attachments that it comes with. I don't think that women are better than men, but there is no denying that women have been a big part of the grassroots movements, both on the right and on the left. And there is a huge divide here, but they are both in both camps pushing forward their ideas, and it's important for us to examine that. So it's time to spill some sweet tea. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sweet Tea series. My name is Ariana Guajardo. Thank you guys for joining me today. So I want to talk about the connection and the compare and contrast grassroots women on the right and the left. So of course, I'm joined today by Sherry Sylvester. There's no one better. Her history in journalism. You've been in the political movement for so long, contributing both your insights and then participating in it. So welcome back to the show, Sherry.
Great to be here, Ariana. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. And I've been loving the stuff on 9th and Congress, your show, the Sherry Sylvester show. The most recent episode I listened to was your commentary on Landman, because I'm late to the game finally finishing that show. But it was an interesting discussion. So I hope people can go over and watch it.
We may have to go back and do another. We may have to do a whole just podcast on Landman. I mean, a whole series.
Well, it got approved for the season 3, so you might have an opportunity for sure.
We're ready.
So I also have, I read your first chapter of the book you're working on right now, All Over the Map. Mm-hmm. And if people don't know your background, you described yourself in the past as a socialist Democrat. And now, of course, you're working for conservatives now at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. But something I found funny in your first chapter, which is public if anyone wants to read it, you said that you have never been a moderate. And getting to know you, first of all, I definitely identify with that. But the more surprising thing is still that you described yourself even as a socialist. What did that mean to you at the time?
Well, what I was thinking at the time, and I think you see it on the left again today, that there's a general belief that the whole party system, mm-hmm. the Democrats have sold out. I mean, there's a lot of them in Congress. And so if you called yourself just a Democrat, that was already capitulating to the patriarchy.
Oh, wow.
Capitulating to the capitalist system. Mm. And so a lot of us were all kinds of Democrats, socialist Democrats, that what we have now. I think Mondami calls himself, the mayor of New York City calls himself a socialist Democrat, but many people just say he's just a communist, and some of his staff call himself communist. I never call myself communist.
Okay.
I was always clear about that, but socialism to me just seemed a little bit more equaling out the income at the time.
Wow. Well, we're going to be talking about people who I think lean a little bit more to the socialist side in certain ways. But we were having a conversation just about how interesting it is that it seems like women are behind a lot of the protests that are happening. And right now with ICE, but also I'm pretty sure with Black Lives Matter as well. And how women are involved in the grassroots sphere on the left. And then you also have really good insight into how that looks on the right instead. But let's start with the left because we're still just when we're recording this, a few days out, but by later, who knows if there's still going to be ICE protests going on. But even in Manor, I live in Manor outside of Austin, kids left the school and walked across the street to like the Chili's to do an ICE protest. So where is this coming from and how are women fitting into this?
I think there's a lot of theories about where it comes from, but it's part of a bigger, I tend to believe with the scholars who think it's part of the bigger feminization of the university campus. Mm. You know, what we know on campus now is 57% of the students are women compared to 42% who are men. So you've got that imbalance going on, and we've talked about that. But so those are the bare numbers. Then on those campuses, you've got a pile of grievance studies teaching that gender itself is just a social construct. You know, once you're born, it's a jump ball. You might be a boy, you might be a girl, you might be non-binary, you might be mixed, you might be something. So we've got that going on. Then we've got, and these are classes that are being taught. We've got people that actively believe that the United States is a functioning patriarchy, where it's boys who rule and girls drool. So you've got that going on. And so that is the cauldron that young women who are on campus are coming out of. They have a personal grievance. They feel like they're discriminated against. You mentioned Black Lives Matter and what we're seeing with the protests against ICE, but of course we also saw that in the pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas protests that went on for so long. And we're not just judging this, you and I, and looking at it and going, there's a lot of women. No, the data shows there's more women.
We're not just talking about people who are participating, but it seems like women are central to the planning for some of those protests and organizations as well, right?
Well, it's what we do. We're very, very, very good at it. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a meeting. Let's assign tasks. You do the signs. You call the media. I mean,
I find that really interesting because the idea is just that women are going to be involved in an organization no matter what. And so if they're indoctrinated to the left, they're going to do that for the left. But then if they're on the right, they're going to do that for the right. That's such an interesting idea. I'd never thought about that before, but I think it's generally true. Like, at least we're seeing that that's the outcome. So right now on college campuses, you're mentioning how the types of studies, but didn't A&M just recently get rid of one of their departments?
A&M did, yes. There's some wailing and gnashing of teeth going on over at College Station. They ended their women and gender studies degree programs. You could get a BS or a BA in women and gender studies, or you could get a certificate, or you could get a graduate certificate. And when we looked at those classes, Ari, they were the kinds of classes that I was describing. How do women fit in a patriarchal world? Queer theory, lots of queer theory, lots of intersectionality. You're not
There's an old word now, intersectionality. That was all the rage when I was in college. But
you're not just a woman, but if you're Latina, then there's a lot going on there. What if you're a short woman, and what if you're a disabled woman? So all of this,
the ranks of privilege, as they put it, right?
The churning up. So this is being seen. I mean, I've gotten questions from reporters that this is some kind of a huge shift in the culture on the campus. But 56 students at A&M are involved in this program. There are 74,000 students at A&M. So this is a lot of stuff that we see here with teachers' unions and everything else. It's people protecting their jobs. But it's really important to people can read whatever books they want, but for the state to support the systematic laying down of ideology and arguments for ideology with no counter. It's just...
Well, yeah, and especially with A&M being a state school like it is. But something I'm wondering, though, so if people aren't familiar with your work right now, if they are wanting to know about DEI and how that's playing out in the fight for universities trying to get rid of their DEI programs, you have to check out what Sherry is writing. So I'm interested in your insight now. A&M getting rid of that program, does that take that mentality out of the other classes that are already using elements of it?
Probably not. Probably not. I think the teachers, when and all the only way that I talk with professors, I know some professors, but they talk to reporters, and reporters say to me, "Well, teachers are the faculty are afraid to bring up issues."
So it's kind of working then, I guess.
I think it's kind of working out, and we would feel badly if this were censorship, but it's not censorship. This is open inquiry. If I say to you, Ariana, I think gender is total construct, and if you and I had been given trucks when we were little girls instead of dolls, we would have started playing football or something. It would have been different. And you are free to come back and say, no, I don't think that's true. I think that when you're born female, that gives you certain characteristics. If you could say that in class, but we know from the tape at A&M that when that woman raised her hand and said, essentially, I disagree, she was invited to leave the class.
Wow. I don't know if I had seen that one coming out of A&M, but I had my own stories from UT being in the film program. That's why when hearing...
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, but hearing about A&M ending their gender study stuff, I was just thinking, well, in film, we had a guest lecturer tell us about how the word bisexual is limiting because it assumes that there's only two genders. And every single class had a section about how does queerness fit in here and trying to... It was weird the kinds of stories that they were trying to rewrite as having some kind of gay LGBTQ agenda, and it was really a pride thing and just claiming things that didn't make sense. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see some change on college campus, but I just don't know yet. I guess we're still waiting to see how that plays out.
It's very hard to change culture, but yeah, I've written a lot about it. We've written a lot about here at TPPF, the passage of the anti-DEI legislation, and then this last session we passed Senate Bill 37, which shifted governance away from faculty councils on campus and put it back.
Would you mind explaining that? Actually, we haven't really covered that on the show. So what was it like before, and how does that look now?
There was something which many college professors thought was sacred, like in the Bible, called shared governance, which happened in the 40s. And what faculty members said is we should play a role in the governing of the universities. We want a seat at the table. Subsequently, what happened was that the faculty took over the entire table. They wanted total control of hiring, control of curriculum, what classes were being taught, how administrators were placed throughout the university. The faculty believed that they ran the university. And that's not the model for the state of Texas. In the Constitution, the governor, who is elected by the people of Texas, appoints boards of regents. Right. And they are charged with running universities. And the reason they are there is because they are business leaders, industry leaders. They know what the students need to succeed.
And if the point of it is to prepare people for the workforce, or if that's what part of why we invest in it as a public, then it makes sense that you have industry leaders being the ones helping guide that forward.
Yeah. So it's a big, and you're asking when, and we've passed these laws. They are models nationwide. Faculty is still looking at ways to resist them, undermine them. They try to overcorrect. They say, well, using this, we won't be able to teach Plato. I mean, it's a transformative process. It's hard to change culture.
Yeah, but so we were talking about what creates that society of women on the left, but let's talk about how women on the right have played a role, especially in the grassroots. I didn't realize until we were talking, and this was really interesting to me. You said that women were a huge part of turning Texas red. What's the story there?
I think in Texas, women were the only people that when our state was totally blue, it was as blue as it is red now.
And set the scene, we're talking 90s here, right?
Mid-80s, probably.
Okay, mid-80s. Okay.
Mid-80s. That what became the Texas Federation of Republican Women just began meeting around the state and saying, this is not serving us. They were more conservative. They wanted different economic policies. They wanted different university policies. And they just started having, and they wanted to get people elected. That was part of the women's movement, too. At that time, we had, nationwide, there were only 19 women in Congress. So, I mean, it was also a process to get more people elected. And Barbara Bush, the wife of the first President Bush, she was involved in this out in West Texas. In San Antonio, this was a big movement. And so they started having some meetings, looking at what they were for, and then they started helping out on campaigns and getting out votes. And beginning in the middle 90s, began to break into getting people elected to public office. Remember, Republicans did not gain control in Texas until 2003. And that was the year we had the governor's mansion and the House and the Senate. And no one who knows anything about it or who lived through those times would say that that would have been possible without conservative women, grassroots women.
It's hard to imagine, first of all, Texas as a blue state, just not living, well, I was born whenever it still was, but no real recollection of that time. So it's weird to even think of Texas like that. But I think you are pointing to something that's interesting, which is women by default just choose to get involved. That's just a natural thing. Like I'm thinking about the numbers for church involvement in particular, or charitable organizations, nonprofits. There's consistently women just running the back end of society, I guess.
Yeah, I think maybe we're not very accepting of things. Or when you see something, you think we could fix that.
Right. Or maybe it's even the feeling of injustice, which is if something's wrong, you want to correct it.
Right, yeah.
And that's, I think, what it plays out politically. We do
this process here at TPPF called the From Here to There in the Path. I think women are really good about the path. I mean, men can't, and we all can do this. I mean, It's not sex linked, but you look at where do you want to be, and a lot of us can lay that out, that vision. But it's like, what do we do tomorrow? Answering that question, if this is our vision, what do we do tomorrow? I think women are very good at going, well, the first thing you do is you call these 10 people, or you call this person who knows this.
So making an action plan is where women really step into that.
Yeah, much better way of saying it, much shorter.
No, that's interesting, though. And I've been thinking, though, since this had come up, what that looks like now for women on the right and what ways they're getting involved now. And the first thing that came to mind was the passage of school choice, and that being a huge driver from Texas moms in particular, saying there is something wrong with our schools and I want to make sure that my baby has the best education possible.
Exactly.
And that was a huge push from women in Texas. So, I mean, men too, but that they were a huge driver on the grassroots front, right?
I think, and it began finally showing up in polling. I mean, we have been working, as long as I've been in Texas, which is, 25, 26, 27 years, we have been working to pass school choice. And even though conservatives and Republicans, some, about half, were kind of in favor of it, it was not one of those issues that moved the needle. But once it began to be framed, largely from the brilliant people in this building, as a parents' rights issue. And that, along with what we saw that happened in COVID, once people began to see actually what was going on in schools, then you could see on the polling that this was what moved women voters, really moved them. So that's why we elected a legislature that was ready to pass it, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize what issues matter to, like what issues are going to motivate women to act. Because once there is something that motivates them, like we've said, they'll just by default start acting. The other movement that I thought about right away on the right is the pro-life movement. So that one, top to bottom, it's just, I'd say 90% women leading that mission, which is interesting because I think that that's the biggest battleground between women in America, where on the left, again, the pro-choice movement, that being a huge thing also, being run by women on one side and the other women on the right. And we're seeing that go to head right now.
I think that's true. I've often wondered about the demographics of that, because I think boomer women like me, they really came out of the Ms. Magazine, pro-choice, my body, my whatever.
Right.
And it seemed to me that younger women were in a very different world where the arguments was different. Contraception was not as dangerous, was more available. So they had to kind of learn the vitriol from the older women. Is kind of how I saw it, because maybe I'm wrong about that. You're younger, but it just seemed to me compared to 40 years ago.
Wait, what do you mean by, is it, you're saying the younger women on the pro-choice side had to learn from the older one, or
well, yeah, because it just didn't seem, when you lived in if you're pro-life, you have we have principles, but there are reasons we're pro-life, and because we believe in life, we believe in babies. But if you don't have that argument, in 40 years ago, when there was no reliable contraception, you could see people feeling more pressure to switch their position, which I don't see now.
I guess another change that we have now is just access to understanding what an abortion looks like on video.
So
and
now
that's
we know
a new
more
tool. Right. Or even just education on the science behind what we know about when heartbeats start, or other, like when toes form, or just other components of that you wouldn't have been able to see for yourself as just an average person. So that is an interesting switch.
Yeah, that is another way of thinking about it. I need to think about this some more. But it always seems strange to me that you had these virulent climate change and saving the baby seals. You have all this stuff on the left.
Or saving the turtles from the straws.
Saving the turtles from the straws, and not seeing a life.
Right.
An actual human life. And so, yeah, that it's...
And you're right, especially with women who, whenever you see injustice, you feel like you're impassioned to act. So it is showing, I guess, a cultural hold, or I guess a hold by whatever powers may be, that says to women, oh, your rights are being taken away if we take away abortion. That's an interesting framing and a real control on the narrative that it shows the left has had still to this day.
Right, yeah, and that's how they play it now.
Right. I do think it's important, though, to figure out how do we bridge this divide between, well, men and women, but we're talking this conversation about women between the right and the left. And the thing that really worries me, why I'm seeing that this is an issue, you had sent me an article from First Things, and they were pointing out that the most common number of children to be born to an American woman between the ages of 25 and 44 is 0. So we're not talking about the average number of kids born. The average, this is just the most common number of children that a woman between 25 and 44 has is 0. So you're more likely to meet a woman in that age range with no kids than one with kids. That kind of scares me. But then are we just going to have a rise of conservatives because we have more of us now?
We're the only ones that are having kids. I mean, and J.D. Vance is now going to have 4. I mean,
right. So what do you
he's
think,
the national
though?
model.
You've been, I guess, been able to observe the political and just people for so long and been so insightful about that. So where do you think that this goes with?
Well, let's riff about it a little bit. I think part of it comes out of that narcissism, that self-involvement that is part of the narrative of what it's like to be a woman. Let's focus on me. Do I want to do this? Always asking that question first. Not, is this the right thing to do? Is this God's path for me? Will this help other people? But there's that therapy focus. Do I want to do it? Having kids is hard.
Yeah.
Why would I want to do that? It's hard, and you've got to find a man. And the odds, as I was saying earlier with the statistics, if you're a college educated woman and you want to marry a man that's also college educated, that's going to be harder.
I was pointing out I did a special Valentine's episode with my husband for Sweet Tea, and we were just talking about how something that really bothers me is on both sides, whenever women blame men for all of their issues and why we're not having marriages, and when men blame women for why we're not. So yeah, you're right to say that this is a problem on both ends, and specifically what comes to mind is the educational gap that we have, where women are more likely to have a college degree than a man. And I think that there are still a lot. We can debate whether or not we think college degrees are worth something, but the women who are getting them clearly think that they are. And so, yeah, we do have a problem now just on finding a spouse. So, yeah, I didn't even think, like, when I was reading that statistic, the first problem is finding someone to be able to have a kid with.
Well, yeah, and it's just having a child, because it's we did go through, a lot of women so wanted children. Remember Murphy Brown? You probably don't. Remember Murphy Brown, that television show? She got pregnant and was not married, decided not to marry. There were 2 potential fathers. She knew who it was. Decided not to marry and to have the child anyway. And that, I knew any number of women when I lived in New York who made that decision. They wanted to have a child. They knew they were going out of childbearing years, and they are single moms by choice not divorced moms. But we're not seeing that now. And that, of course, is a very difficult choice to make.
Right. That's interesting, though, like, because on the right, we, of course, have messaging about the importance of families
Family
and
is
fathers
critical.
in kids' lives. But I wonder what made that switch happen, or if it was just women creating this ideal of course, I can have a kid and raise them on my own and then their kids realizing actually this created a difficult situation.
Well,
I don't know where that
it's
changed.
before they beat it out of them that they wanted children.
That's fair, I guess. Yeah.
I think women want children. That's you.
So do you think that round one was saying you don't need a husband, and then step two was saying, and you don't need kids either?
Right. It just came. Yeah. A
Wow.
woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. I mean,
You do hear that. Yeah.
It was part of that. Part of that. But yeah, I need to get Chat GPT to pull me up some census data and find out where that is. But the fact that that people are not forming families, I mean, that's detrimental to us as a country, not only detrimental to individuals.
Well, when we talk about fixing problems and proposing policy, it is a good thing for us to be able to realize how much of a hold the left has over at least this generation of 2 generations of women, for millennials and Gen Z in particular, when you've convinced them that they shouldn't even prioritize having kids and that is not a worthwhile thing. But I wonder if that does come from this. I mean, it's probably all combined, but I'm thinking about books like Brave New World, where people are lulled into a sense of happiness. They'll take a drug anytime they're not feeling happy. And I'm thinking about our scrolling on social media and how we have just such quick access to comfort that we are more uncomfortable with being uncomfortable than ever before. So of course it's less likely for women to want to have kids because it is going to be a burden. It is going to change your life. It does mean that your stuff's going to have to change, and change isn't comfy. So
yeah,
there's my monologue. I don't know what else to say on that.
Well, and the more, I mean, for those of us who live in families, you realize the enduring value. I mean, it's not just the child; it's the grandparents, and then as the children are older, then they're bringing in, they're bringing in more people. Jefferson is working on a wedding for his son. I mean, so that's expanding the family, and you see what God's plan was, and. But if you're outside of that, if you're not speaking to your family.
Oh, that's another thing becoming popular. Have you seen that there's online movements now of people encouraging others to cut off their family? Like if your family slights you, or if they're too right-wing in some way, or they don't agree with your choices, that the best thing to do is to cut them off. That's being heavily considered, whether it be temporary or long-term. That's the promoted course of action when you disagree with your own family. So how can we expect people to have regular conversations with someone they're not related to if you're willing to just say, cut off your own blood?
It doesn't matter. I mean, that is just nuts. I do feel like we've lost that. And, we're at a time when we're so polarized and things are so divided. But as I write in All Over the Map, we've always been in that time. It's always been tribal. It's just been really important we've understood to maintain community and to maintain our families, that you've got to be able to talk. You've got to be able to talk to people. So
how do we bridge that divide? As someone who yourself was able to change so many of your opinions and your worldview, how do you engage with the other side? What are those? How do you create more touch points?
I spend a lot of time talking to reporters. Those are my touch points too. And of course, I have family that has different points of view. But you really have to be interested in how did you get to feel that way. And for me, it was like I did not have a road to Damascus moment where I awakened one day. The first time I ever voted for a Republican was voting for Christy Whitman as the governor of New Jersey. And I didn't vote for her because I was convinced she was the right person. I voted for her because I was a reporter and I knew the Democrat was a crook.
Interesting.
So it was, I felt when I did it, when I went up to the polls, I felt that I was being disloyal to my father, who was my political mentor, and my family. But I also felt like, as a good citizen, I was one of the people who knew that he was a crook. And but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm a Republican now, get me a red jacket. And I think that you just have to be open to seeing one thing. I mean, I tell people a lot to make sure they have a very varied media diet. You know, on your podcasts, you and I listen to the very best conservative thought, but we've got to listen to some of the thinkers on the other side too, and see and find a thread and go, that's right.
Well, I'm interested then. What do you listen to and read? How do you make sure that you have a varied political points whenever you're reading?
Big fan of the Free Press and our girl Barry Weiss. I don't know if you know the story there. Barry was fired from the New York Times. She was a liberal. She was fired from the New York Times because she felt, she's Jewish, she felt that the Times was giving short shrift to the point of view of Israel, and that they were elevating the pro-Palestinian cause. And horrible things happened to her, and she was on the editorial page. They fired her. She went off and started a newsletter, just like you and I both have. Her newsletter, and she invited the best voices from the left and the best voices from the right. So she exposed me to people, I joined right on, that I hadn't heard before. Coleman Hughes, an African-American liberal writer, interested a lot in religion. Started listening to him. I listened to Andrew Sullivan, who led the fight for gay marriage, and has a lot of reflection about that. He's really hates the way the word queer has been appropriated. For him, that's like the N word, and he doesn't understand why we're now trying to put it into regular use.
I wonder what his thoughts are on how it's used too, because queer has just become this catch-all that means nothing and everything.
Right? Yeah. So, but smart people have smart ideas, and so what Barry did, she did that, and then she brought in a lot of our people that we read all the time, a lot of conservative people, Neil Ferguson. AFPI people are on there. And so guess what happened with her newsletter became valued at about $100 million, and CBS just hired her.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Bought the newsletter, and so you see all these, oh my gosh, CBS is falling apart. They've got somebody there that knows nothing about television. But I also see that viewership on CBS is increasing because it's now a place that you can go where you might get a halfway decent assessment of what's actually
Isn't it
happening.
funny, the bar that we have now for the traditional news networks?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's wonderful about podcasts, which is more and more people are getting their information from podcasts. And with podcasts, you get more than that soundbite. You get to hear the questions that you're asking. You think that, well, why do you think that? What made you think that? And a lot of them are just screaming like regular news. But if I find myself, writing or putting down the party line, I really try to back up and say, well, what's the throwback on this? Those women that were standing in Minnesota and harassing the African American ICE officers.
Right, and calling them race traitors and other stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Where are they coming from? And what are their lives like? And we should have them on here. You have any kids? Have any interest in having any kids? What are you doing in Minnesota? Why don't you move to Florida? Cold up there.
I've been thinking about doing that at UT, like a man on the street thing, and just asking, like, a college student who's at a liberal university, do you want to get married someday? What does that look like? Or what do you imagine that to be? Yeah, we'll see. Now I'm saying it out loud. Maybe that'll make it happen.
I think it's good. But I think, and maybe they're not the best people, but there are people, I've had on my pod a couple of UT professors from the left, and they're very articulate. I just think we all know how siloed our news has become.
Right.
and in even the news that we love. And I think as we become more conscious of that, podcasts are helpful. Somebody told me this week they thought that podcasts, the smart podcasts, were like the old magazines. They were like Vanity Fair used to be, or the New Yorker, where you could get a bigger idea, a bigger discussion. So
you're saying it as opposed to what a newspaper was at the time, or what do you mean by that?
Well, newspapers have always been short. I mean,
Right.
they're trying to grab attention. Podcasts, I mean, you want to do interesting ones, but they're not built on the bite. They're built on the kind of rolling out the thought a little. So
Interesting. So that's the last, it might actually be one of the last forms of long form thought that we have. I was talking to the attorneys just about, they always bring up the Lincoln Douglas debates and how we used to have this standard for presidents to be able to give hour-long conversations and real debate, and not just 1 3-hour conversation. They would do that over and over again. So I guess I am glad that we still have the podcast sphere as a way for people to, whether even if it's just because they're stuck in a car for a long time, but actually listen or participate in longer form media than a scroll would be.
And I think one of the best things, and one of the disprovers, and I guess I could do both sides on this, one of the best things that President Trump does, and he hasn't done it recently, but when he sits at his desk and just talks to reporters for a couple hours.
Right.
And they just ask questions. And then when you hear that, then the country can see better how he thinks. You still may not like how he thinks, but you can arrive at, you can see, I thought this, I was angry about this, they're making all this money here, they're going to put the tariff down.
You're at least getting someone's point of view.
Right.
It's a starting ground. And it's similar to a little bit of a throwback the last time that you were on the show, and we basically had a debate about feminism, which I keep thinking about. And later we'll have to, next time we talk about Landman, I can tell you how Landman almost made me want to be a feminist with the way that he was treating his women characters.
Well, now, did you watch season 2?
I did watch season 2. It was better, but yeah, it was slightly better. And actually, my husband was funny. He kept getting mad at Cammie's character, but I feel like I need to defend her. But this is side tangents. The point being that I am glad that you're right, that podcasts allow us to have, not only articulate one person's point of view, but even in wasn't formal debate, but just in conversation, be able to flesh that out a little bit. There's another one I've listened to a lot of religious commentary for all different points, but one of my favorite Catholic ones is Trent Horn. And in the past, he got a lot of critique from the way he would, in debates, being a little bit cheeky and having little one-line zingers. But what he started doing is having people on his show just, instead of formal debate, just conversation. And I think that that's an interesting way to create common ground. So I hope we see more of that. Because again, whenever we have the most common amount of kids for a woman in her 20s and through 40s to have being 0, something needs to change right now. So we'll see where that goes. But if people want to find more of your insights on everything from DEI to Landman, where can they find you, Sherry?
Well, go to texaspolicy.com. I'm on Twitter at Sylvester1630. I'm also on Substack. So you can follow me on Substack, and I put everything that I write on there. So it's trying to keep up with higher ed, because I really want to see this change. But also, so much of what I'm writing in All Over the Map is seeing patterns, seeing where women are, where politics are, where we are with this. It's not the first time we've had National Guard shootings in the streets. I mean, and how did we react? And so looking at what history has to teach us.
And that's awesome, because I'd rather have something to learn from in the past than just throw spaghetti on the wall and hope something new sticks.
Right, yeah. Very little new. Very little new in the world.
Well, thank you so much for your insights, Sherry, and for joining me on the Sweet Tea series. And everyone else, I will see you next time.